Robert Frost's poem, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it's queer to stop without a farmhouse near. Between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. This is my essay about my poet. Have you ever thought about stopping in the woods to watch it fill with snow? Robert Frost did. His poem, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, describes nature in the winter. His descriptions of wintry nature has inspired me to write about the things I see every day. Robert Frost was a poet and children's author who was born on March 26, 1974 in San Francisco. Robert Frost's farmyard could have inspired him to write about nature. Robert had 6 kids and moved a lot. He did not write like other poets because he did not write free verse. In 1913, he published his first book of poems, A Boy's Will. In 1924, Robert Frost got a Pulitzer Prize. In 1950, the United States Senate adopted a resolution to honor Robert Frost. In 1961, JFK invited him to read one of his poems for his campaign. In 1963, Robert Frost dies on January 29th in Boston. Robert Frost's poem, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, describes the woods filling with snow. He uses vivid words like downy flakes, farmhouse, and harness bells. His use of vivid imagery to describe the woods in the winter. It made me feel like I was in the woods. Reading his poem inspired me to write what I see in my mind, like the downy wind and banana tree. I hope the imagery in my poem is as interesting as Robert Frost's, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. This is my poem, Stopping by Forest on a Rainy Afternoon. Whose forest these are, I think I know. His house is in the city, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his forest fill with rain. My little monkey must think it's queer to stop without a banana tree near. Between the forest and flowing lake, the warmest evening of the year. He gives his tail bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the drip of easy rain and downy wind. The forest is beautiful, warm, and deep, but I have 5 promises to keep, and days to go before I sleep, and days to go before I sleep.
The Pasture by Robert Frost. I'm going out to clean the pasture spring. I'll only stop to rake the leaves away and wait to watch the water clear. I shan't be long. You come too. I'm going out to fetch the little calf that's standing by its mother. It's so young it totters when she looks it with her tongue. I shan't be long. You come too. Have you ever thought to write about nature? In Robert Frost's poem, The Pasture, he describes nature and animals. His descriptions of nature and animals inspired me to write about nature in my backyard. Robert Frost was a poet who was born in 1874 in San Francisco, California. Robert Frost was inspired by his farm, the countryside, animals, and nature. One thing unique about Robert Frost's poetry is he didn't write in the modern way. He wrote in conversational style. He also wrote about his daily life. Robert Frost has 6 children. In 1894, Robert Frost had his first poem published, My Butterfly. In 1895, Robert Frost took a job as a newspaper reporter. In 1896, Robert Frost's first child, Elliot, was born. Robert Frost received his fourth and final prize in 1943. Robert Frost's poem, The Pasture, describes the sounds of a pasture getting cleaned. He uses a lot of vivid words like leaves, totters, and lips. His use of vivid imagery to describe the sounds of the pasture made me feel like I was in a loud pasture. Reading his poem inspired me to write about what I do in nature in my backyard. For example, trying to build the middle ball, but not too small. In conclusion, I hope the imagery in my poem is as fun to read as Robert Frost. My inspired poem. I'm going out to make a snowman. I'll only stop to drink hot cocoa, wait to watch my mug fill with hot cocoa. I'm going out to fetch that bottom ball. I shan't be long. If you like, you may come along. I'm almost done, but let's keep going. Time to build that middle ball, but not too small. Last but not least is the head, but not too big like a bed. I shan't be long. If you like, you may come along.
In My Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in a village though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it's gear to stop without a farmhouse near. Between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year, he gives his harness bells to shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sound is sweet, the easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have a promise to keep. And many miles to go before I sleep, and many miles to go before I sleep. This is my essay. Have you ever stopped by the woods and watched it fill up with snow? Well, Robert Frost has. His poem, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, uses rhyme and long lines. This is why Robert Frost inspired me to write my own poetry. Frost was born on March 26, 1874, in San Francisco, California. As a boy, his father died. He moved to Massachusetts. He published his first poem in high school for $15. He was inspired to write poetry by the nature and the countryside. In 1912, Robert Frost moved to England to find better luck with a publisher. When World War I started, he moved back to America. In 1924, he won his first publisher prize for his book, New Hampshire. He also won his a gold medal. Robert Frost died January 29th, 1963. Robert Frost's poem, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, describes the woods on a snowy evening. He uses many different words as an example: bells on a horse, and a cow out in the pasture. Reading his poem inspired me to write about nature at my house, leaves in every color. Inspired by Robert Frost, leaf piles everywhere. Whose leaf piles are, I think I know. They are everywhere. Left, right, up, down, south, east, north, west. Branches look very bare. It is very cold out with leaves falling. Everyone is raking them up into many different piles. The wind is a howling, woo! Mom is inside cooking a pie. It smells very good, and everyone wants to try. And I bet it tastes as good as it smells.
Okay, this is my inspired poem that Robert Frost wrote. His woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it's clear to stop without a farmhouse near. Between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year, he gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there was some mistake. But the only other sound is a sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep. And miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. This is my essay. Have you ever spent time in the woods? Robert Frost did. His poem, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, describes him stopping by woods with his horse. His description of the woods has inspired me to write poetry about me and my tractor in the woods. Robert Frost was a poet. Robert Frost was born on March 26 in San Francisco. He was inspired by nature, and he had a conversational style which was new to the poetry world. There are 6 major events in Robert Frost's life. In 1896, Frost and Eleanor have a child. In 1912, 12, Robert Frost and Eleanor moved to England and continued to farm and write poetry. In 1915, World War I starts, and Frost and Eleanor moved back to America. In 1923, Seven by Woods on a Snowy Evening is published. In 1961, John F. Kennedy invited Frost to read a poem for JFK's presidential inauguration. In 1962, Frost sadly dies from surgery problems. Robert Frost's poem Seven by Woods describes the sounds of the forest. When I was reading it, I could hear the sounds of the forest and the trees moving. To use imagery like My Little Horse Must Think It's Queer can allow me to see the horse. The imagery in my poem is dark green paint. I hope you like the imagery in my tractor. Here's my inspired poem, My Tractor. Whose woods these are, I think I know. He lives in the village though. My little tractor must think it's queer to stop without a farmhouse there. Dark green paint and shredded wheels hope it drag trees down the hills. He gives his engine a rev to ask for some mistake, but I have a promise to keep. And I have to go before I eat, miles to go before I eat.
Love That Boy by Walter Dean Myers. Love that boy like a rabbit loves to run. I said I love that boy like a rabbit loves to run. Love to call him in the morning, love to call him, hey there, son. This is my essay. Have you ever written about people that you love? Walter D. Myers did. Love That Boy describes how he loves special people. His vivid description of people that he loves inspired me to write about people that I love. Walter Dean Myers is a poet and children's author who was born in 1937 in Martins, West Virginia. As a boy in 1950, Walter struggled in school due to speech impediment. Then in 5th grade, he begins to write his own poems. As a teenager in 1960, he drops out of high school to join the Army. In 1969, he published his first book. Walter's poem, Love That Boy, describes a person that he loves. He uses a lot of descriptive words, like I said, I love that boy, like a rabbit loves to run. It made me enjoy the descriptive words, and it inspired me to write my own poem like Walter's. I used love that dog like a callous sea. I hope my poem is as good as Walter's. Walter D. Myers. This is my poem. Inspired by Walter D. Myers, titled Love That Dog. Love that dog like a cow loves to run. I said like a cow loves to eat. I said I love that cow like a dog loves to eat. Love that dog like a cow loves to eat. I said I love that dog like a cow loves to eat. Love to call me brown dog in the morning. Love to call me hey there, hey. Second poem title, Love That Cow. Love that cow like a dog loves to run. I said I love that cow like a dog loves to run. Love to call her in the morning. Love to call her hey there, ditto.
This poem is named Dog by Valerie Worth. Under a maple tree, the dog lies down, lolls his tongue, yawns, rests his long chin carefully between his front paws, looks up, alert, chops with heavy jaws at the slow fly, blinks, rolls, on his side, sighs, closes his eyes, sleeps all afternoon in his loose skin. This is my poem about Valerie Worth. Have you ever walked barefoot in the grass? Valerie Worth did. Her poem Barefoot describes the feeling of walking outside in nature, has inspired me to write a poem about nature. Valerie Worth is a poet for children. Valerie Worth was born in Sophomore, Pennsylvania in 1933. Valerie Worth was inspired to write by nature in In 1970, Valerie Worth published her first book, Small Poems, illustrated by Nelte Bennett. In 1991, the National Council of Teachers of English honored her with the Poetry Award from Excellence at Poetry for Kids. In 1994, Valerie Worth died from cancer. Valerie Worth's poem describes walking in the grass in nature. Valerie uses lots of vivid words like spikes and pokey. Valerie Worth also uses this. Valerie Worth also This has inspired me to write my own poem using vivid words like blue sky and glistening stars. I hope my poem is as fun to read as Valerie Worth's poem. This is my poem, inspired by Valerie Worth. We're riding far over the bridge and through the traffic. We arrive at campgrounds, unpacking clothes, getting ready for bed. I go out to the dock to see the moon glistening on the water, and the waves of the water makes this lovely sound. In the early morning, the birds cheep. I change. We all smell yummy, delicious food. We eat and eat. Then we drink and drink. We swim, we go boating. We live life in peace. The day goes, and so the moon and stars dance above us. So pretty. The day morning comes. We pack and pack. Then we ride through the hill and over the bridge. Now we are home. The place that we belong. The place that we belong. By me.